I didn't sit when Mr. David finally offered the chair. I stayed standing, one hand resting lightly against the table, the other steadying my breath. The lobby doors were locked now. I could hear the faint thud of the bolt sliding home. He kept the folder open between us, but he stopped reading. He was listening instead. The text on my phone stayed there. One line. No punctuation. No signature. I turned the screen face down and said, "Nothing." Mr. David cleared his throat. "For the record," he said, "this box predates our current compliance system. It's grandfathered. That means any access triggers a manual review." I nodded. I already knew that. I had known it since the attorney mailed me the inventory summary 12 years earlier and told me in careful language to leave it alone until I needed it. I had left it alone. I had left everything alone. He glanced at the monitor again. The man outside was still there. He pretended to check his watch. Then he leaned back and lowered his voice. "Do you have anyone waiting for you?" "No," I said. That wasn't true, but it was accurate. He tapped the folder once. "Your father's account has been dormant, not abandoned. That's important." He paused, then added, "So is the beneficiary chain." I didn't respond. Silence made people talk. Mr. David was good at order. He was not good at silence. He stood, walked to the door, and spoke to someone in the hall. When he returned, his tone had changed. Less precise. More human. "I'm going to escort you," he said. "Policy." I followed him down a corridor I remembered from childhood visits I wasn't supposed to remember. The vault room smelled the same. Cold metal and paper. He keyed in a code and opened a drawer that hadn't been touched in years. He didn't open the box. He slid it across the counter toward me and stepped back. "Sign here," he said, "and here." I signed. My handwriting didn't shake. It hadn't shaken the day I signed the birth certificate alone, either. When I lifted the lid, I didn't look inside right away. I closed it again and asked a question that mattered. "Is the camera on?" He nodded. "Always." "Good," I said. He watched me more closely after that. I didn't count anything. I didn't remove anything. I closed the box and locked it. "I'll take it as is." His shoulders dropped a fraction. Relief, maybe, or disappointment. I couldn't tell. As we walked back, he asked the question he'd been holding since I arrived. "What do you plan to do with it?" "I plan to fix a roof," I said, "and pay a contractor who's been waiting 3 years." He stopped walking. "That's it. That's all." He studied my face for signs of something else. There wasn't anything to see. At the door, he unlocked the bolt and stepped aside. The man outside turned away too quickly. Mr. David didn't comment. He handed me a receipt, then, after a pause, added, "If anyone contacts you about this, call me." "I won't," I said, "but thank you." I left without hurrying. The air felt thinner outside. I crossed the street and drove toward the highway. I didn't make it 5 miles. At the gas station, I parked by the pump and shut the engine off. I didn't take the box with me. I left it in the trunk. My phone buzzed again. This time, it rang. I didn't answer. I heard the engine before I saw the car. Dark, too clean for the road. It stopped behind me, blocking the lane. A man stepped out. Black jacket, hands visible until they weren't. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. "Open the trunk," he said. Slow. I put my hands where he could see them. "There's nothing here for you," I said. He laughed once. Not loud. "I know exactly what's here." The gun came up. Not to my head. Lower. A deliberate choice. I did what made sense. I opened the trunk. My husband came out of the station at the wrong moment. He saw the angle of the man's arm and moved without thinking. He shouted my name. The man swore and ran. My husband chased him. I stayed where I was. I didn't scream. I called 911 and said the address and nothing else. I watched the taillights disappear. The call dropped. I didn't see my husband again. They told me later it was a collision. High speed. No witnesses willing to stay. They used words like unfortunate and unavoidable. I wrote down the times. I kept the voicemail from the bank. I saved the call log. I requested the police report and waited. The baby came early. I signed the forms with a pen someone else handed me. I didn't open the box again for years. When my son needed surgery, I did. I went to my stepbrother's office because the letter said I had to. He smiled when he saw me. He called me family. He told me it was bad timing. He said the market was tight. He slid papers across the desk and spoke too much. I signed because I had to. I kept copies. I learned to keep copies of everything. That was the beginning, not the end. Mr. David didn't offer me a seat. He stood behind his desk with my folder open, eyes fixed on a single line like it had bitten him. The wall clock clicked loud enough to sound like a warning. I kept my hands on my belly and my key on the table. "Ms. Ross," he said, voice careful, "this box is still active. That means the monitoring is still active." I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. He pressed an intercom button and told the security guard to lock the lobby doors. Then he pulled a small camera monitor toward him and rewound footage from 5 minutes earlier, me walking in, the guard's glance, and a man outside who didn't come in. Mr. David's jaw tightened. "Someone just confirmed you're here," he said, "and it wasn't you." My phone vibrated once. Unknown number. The text read, "Stop. Turn around. Now, please." I didn't go home after signing those papers. I sat in my car with the engine off and read every page again. The language was clean. Too clean. Words like consideration and transfer and good faith appeared where money should have been. The number he promised was written in a separate memo, not the agreement itself. That mattered. I took photos. I emailed them to myself with the subject line set to the date. Then I drove back to the village. The surgery happened the next morning. I signed the consent forms with the same steady hand I'd used at the bank. The nurse asked if anyone was with me. I said yes and no. Both were true. When the surgeon came out, he used careful phrases and avoided guarantees. The procedure worked. Recovery would take time. Time was something I understood. The payment I'd received covered the bill. It did not cover what I'd given up. I told myself that was temporary. I told myself I would never go back. I kept my copies in a folder marked taxes and put it in a drawer that stayed shut. For almost a year, nothing happened. That silence was instructive. No calls, no follow-ups, no checks. I took that as information. Then the emails started. They came from an address I recognized from childhood letterhead, now updated with a modern logo. The tone was friendly, casual. He wrote as if we'd spoken recently. He asked for confirmations I didn't owe. He asked for signatures I wasn't required to give. Each message arrived late in the day, often on Fridays. Timing is a choice. I replied once. One sentence. "Please direct all requests to counsel." I copied the attorney, who had mailed me the inventory years earlier. Her response arrived 20 minutes later. Short, professional. She asked for documents. I sent everything. Her tone changed after the third attachment. She called me the next morning. "You weren't paid fair value," she said. "Not outrage, just fact. And this memo is not binding." "I know," I said. "Why did you sign?" "Because my child was on a table." She didn't ask anything else. That call marked a shift. Notices began arriving by certified mail. Not threats. Notices. Requests for records. Notices of routine review. The company's accountant emailed asking for clarification on an old ledger entry. I did not answer. I forwarded it. The auditor followed up with a second email, CCING, my stepbrother. His reply came quickly and too long. He explained context no one had asked for. He named people. He referenced arrangements that were not on paper. He assumed familiarity. I saved it. When he called, I let it ring. When he texted, I didn't respond. Silence wasn't a tactic. It was a boundary. The next move came from him. He invited me to the office to clear the air. He wrote that phrase exactly. I agreed on the condition that counsel be present. He said that wasn't necessary. I insisted. He relented. The office looked the same. The walls still held photographs from events I remembered differently. He greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and talked while we walked. He spoke about legacy, about family, about how my father would have wanted us united. He used my father's name as leverage. I noted the timestamp on my phone. When he said it, the attorney arrived late and apologized. She placed a recorder on the table and announced the date. My stepbrother frowned. He asked if that was necessary. She said yes. The meeting lasted 37 minutes. He spoke for 29. He said the shares were inactive. He said my presence complicated things. He said he'd done me a favor. He said the robbery was random. He said tragedy had a way of following money. He said I should let him handle the rest. I asked 2 questions. Where did the valuation come from? And who instructed the bank to call you? He didn't answer either. Afterward, the attorney and I sat in the hallway. She wrote notes. She didn't look at me when she said, "There's more here." What kind of more? I asked. The kind that wakes systems up. That phrase stayed with me. The next week, an older man called my phone. He introduced himself as a retired investigator. He said my name carefully, like he practiced. He didn't ask to meet. He asked if I'd received a notice dated the 15th. I checked my folder. I had. Good, he said. That means it's moving. We met at a diner outside town. He arrived early and chose a booth with a clear view of the door. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, he didn't speculate. He referenced filings, dates, case numbers. He explained jurisdiction without lecturing. Local offices are tangled. He said, that's not a criticism. It's a map. He asked if I had bank alerts. I did. He asked if I had call logs. I did. He asked if I had emails that weren't meant to be read out loud. I did. He didn't promise outcomes. He explained process. 2 weeks later, the accountant resigned. The auditor requested an extension. A clerk from the county recorder's office called to verify a signature. She read it slowly. Is this yours? I said no. She asked me to email a copy of my ID. I did. She thanked me and said nothing else. The first system woke up. My stepbrother sent a message at 2:14 a.m. Why are people calling me? No greeting. No punctuation. I didn't reply. A courier delivered a packet to my door. Inside were copies of documents I hadn't seen before. They were meant to reassure me. They did the opposite. The dates overlapped in ways they shouldn't. The signatures varied. The notary stamps were inconsistent. I logged everything. When the bank manager's name appeared on a subpoena, I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt confirmation. Mr. David called me once. He apologized without using the word. He said he'd followed instructions. He said he'd thought it was safer. He said he was wrong. I thanked him and ended the call. The retired investigator called again. They're asking questions in the Capitol. He said, not the loud kind. What do you need from me? I asked. Nothing, he said. You've already done it. The hearing notice arrived on a Tuesday. I marked the date. I arranged childcare. I printed the emails in order. I charged my phone. I wore plain clothes. I brought nothing I didn't need. My stepbrother arrived late and smiled too broadly. He sat beside his counsel and leaned back like the room belonged to him. It didn't. When the clerk called my name, the room went quiet, not dramatic, just attentive. The judge asked for records. The attorney placed them on the table. The auditor spoke briefly. The bank submitted logs. Time stamps appeared on a screen. My stepbrother interrupted once. He was warned. He interrupted again. He was noted. The judge asked him a question. He answered too quickly. He corrected himself and added detail no one requested. That was when the room changed. The hearing recessed. Notices were issued. Accounts were flagged. Movement followed systems. I went home before dark. The retired investigator left a voicemail I kept. "It's not over," he said, "but it's not yours anymore." He was right. After the hearing, things stopped moving in ways I could see. That was deliberate. When systems shift from review to enforcement, they go quiet first. I focused on what I could control. I kept routines small and exact. School drop-offs, medication times, physical therapy appointments. Every receipt went into the same folder. I didn't tell anyone what was happening, not because I was hiding it, but because talking invites interpretation. Paper does not. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from a firm I didn't recognize. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to my stepbrother, sent to my address by mistake or design. I didn't open it. I scanned the envelope, logged the tracking number, and forwarded photos to counsel. She replied with one line, "Keep it sealed." That same afternoon, my stepbrother called. He left a voicemail. He sounded tired for the first time. He said my name twice. He said he didn't understand why this was happening. He said people were overreacting. He said the company couldn't function like this. He said we needed to talk as family. I saved the message. The retired investigator explained what I was seeing. They're separating roles. He said, once that starts, people get nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. Mistakes came quickly. An email meant for the auditor landed in my inbox. It referenced an attachment that wasn't attached. The body contained instructions, specific ones, about timing, about moving funds before a review finalized. The sender recalled it 2 minutes later. Too late. The auditor called me directly. He didn't apologize. He asked if I had received anything unusual. I said yes. He asked me to forward it. I did. That call marked another shift. A deputy from a neighboring county visited my home the following week. He stood on the porch and asked if I had time to answer a few questions. I said yes. He asked them calmly and took notes by hand. He didn't accuse. He verified names, dates, relationships. When he finished, he thanked me and left a card. My stepbrother sent another message that night, shorter this time. "You don't know who you're dealing with." I didn't respond. I forwarded it. At work, he started losing people. First quietly, an assistant resigned. Then an operations manager went on leave and never returned. Vendors stopped answering calls. A lender asked for updated disclosures. The tone shifted from assumption to requirement. I was asked to provide testimony in writing. I did. Plain language. No adjectives. Just sequence. During this time, I returned to the church. Not for comfort, for completion. The roof repairs resumed. I paid the contractor on schedule. He didn't ask questions. He thanked me and went back to work. The investigator called again. "They've pulled historical filings," he said. "Back farther than you think." That mattered. My stepbrother had relied on age and reputation. He assumed old things stayed buried. He assumed I wouldn't know where to look. He assumed wrong. A subpoena reached the bank. Another reached the notary, whose stamp appeared too often. The county clerk flagged a batch of filings for review. Each action was small. Together, they formed pressure. The arrest didn't happen on television. It happened in an office hallway after a meeting that ran long. My stepbrother was asked to stay behind. He argued. He tried to call someone. His phone was taken and logged. He was escorted out through a side door. I found out from a notice, not a call. The case expanded. Names I recognized appeared in filings. Others I didn't. The bank manager accepted a suspended sentence and lost his license. The notary surrendered her commission. The auditor submitted a supplemental report that changed the scope of the case. I was asked once if I felt vindicated. I didn't answer. That wasn't the word. When the plea was entered, it was done without a speech. 15 years. Asset forfeiture. Restrictions on contact. The judge read the terms without emphasis. I attended one visit at the facility. I didn't tell my husband. I needed to see him once to confirm the end of the line. He spoke fast. He blamed timing. He blamed pressure. He blamed me. I listened. I said nothing. When the guard opened the door, I stood and left. That was the last time I saw him. The company was dissolved through filings and sales. I closed it properly, paid outstanding obligations, sold what remained. The proceeds went where they belonged. The church, the clinic, the road that washed out every spring. Life simplified. I returned to work that mattered. My children grew. The noise faded. What remained was quiet and accurate. I kept the folder. I still do. The paperwork finished before the feelings did. That was expected. Systems close cleanly. People don't. After the sentence was entered, the remaining filings moved quickly. Asset lists were finalized. Accounts were closed or transferred under supervision. Notices went out to parties who had relied on assumptions for years. Most didn't contest. A few tried and withdrew after reading the disclosures. No one called me directly anymore. Everything came through counsel, logged, and time-stamped. I asked to be removed from future correspondence once the dissolution was complete. My attorney confirmed it in writing. She sent a final summary with a cover note that read, "You did this correctly." I filed it and moved on. The church reopened in late fall. The roof held through the first storm. The contractor sent photos without being asked. The clinic opened the following spring with a single exam room and a generator that worked when the power didn't. The road was graded and drained. None of it was named after anyone. That mattered to me. People in town asked questions in indirect ways. They asked if the funding was secure. They asked if there would be more work. They didn't ask about my family. I answered what was necessary and stayed quiet otherwise. Silence kept the focus where it belonged. At home, life settled into patterns that didn't depend on adrenaline. School schedules, grocery lists, therapy appointments that ended with progress notes instead of alarms. I stopped waking at night to check the door. I stopped replaying the gas station in my head. I slept without setting my phone face down. Once, a reporter emailed asking for comment on the case. I replied with one sentence. All actions were handled through counsel and the court. I didn't hear back. The retired investigator called one last time. He didn't ask for anything. He told me the files were archived and that external oversight had closed its review. He said the local offices were changing procedures quietly. That's how it sticks, he said. I thanked him. We hung up. I returned the recorder the attorney had loaned me. She asked if I wanted copies of everything. I told her I already had them. She smiled and said that didn't surprise her. Years passed. The children grew. The church hosted community dinners. The clinic hired a second nurse. The road stopped washing out. None of this made the news. That was the point. One afternoon, I found the key again while cleaning a drawer. The same key I'd carried into the bank. I held it for a moment and then put it back. The box had been emptied properly, witnessed, and documented years earlier. The key no longer opened anything. It didn't need to. I thought about my father less often. When I did, it was without urgency. I could hold more than one truth at the same time. He built fear and called it order. I dismantled what remained and called it maintenance. The difference mattered. I kept my records because they reminded me how things actually move. Not through force, through sequence, through dates that line up, through people who change their tone when they see proof. I never raised my voice. I never threatened anyone. I never asked for exceptions. I let systems do what they are designed to do when they are given accurate information. That is what ended it. On the last page of the final filing, there was a line that read, "No further action required." I closed the folder and put it away. I didn't need to look at it again. Life went on. Quietly, correctly,